Catflap chats. I fucking lost count of what episode this is now. We've got Ryan Evans with us today. So online, it's Ryan, the holistic health coach. Is that right?
That's it. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So on Instagram, Ryan, the holistic health coach. I suppose when I was looking a bit about kind of what you do, there is a whole list of things that you've got under your banner. So PT, ex-bodybuilder, obviously massive into your yoga now, but spirituality, I saw psychology, health, and gut health, which you're really prominent with. But then loads of other things as well. I was just writing down, I suppose, buzzwords, but personal development, detoxing, social media, fasting, male body issues. You do a lot of retreats, manifesting. There's a load of things at the moment which are actually quite prevalent, especially in this lockdown life that we're kind of living in over here in the UK anyway. So thanks for coming on, pal. What's news? What's going on in your world at the moment?
No, pleasure, man. Thanks for inviting me. Not much, really. Pretty chilling over here in Australia. I live quite in the outback a bit. So
Yeah.
I'm not in the city as such. I'm in a little city. I'm in a little sort of like town. So it's proper quiet, close to the sea. I'm super grateful for living here rather than getting stuck over in the UK.
Yeah.
And for all this lockdown and this crazy 220 that we are actually living in right now. But yeah, man, it's good. Life is good.
So what do you do then day to day? So for people who don't know you or may have only just started following on Instagram, say, tell us a bit about sort of what you get up to and what's your sort of day-to-day life at the moment, and then we can, I suppose, start picking apart some of that and really getting into it.
So do you mean like my sort of what I do for my day or what I do for my work?
So work, and then we'll pick it up from there then.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I work with people with all sorts of, from one scale of wanting to be healthier, and then the other person really struggling with chronic mental health, massive depression, anxiety. Then I've got the chronic illness clients. So I have stage 4 cancer I'm dealing with, chronic gut conditions, big celiac responders, all sorts of trauma stuff. I can go on with the amounts of different varieties of people that I work with. But all I basically do is I've done my fair bit of research, and I've worked with some great coaches in this matter, and I've done a lot of my own deeper work over the last few years. And I work and give my clients the tools that they need to heal themselves, basically.
Yeah.
So a lot of people come to me because they want me to fix them.
Yeah.
They come to me because they're in a bad state and they want me to fix them. But I don't do that. I just give them tools and support for them to be able to do that themselves and give the power back to them, rather than always going to an external source all the time to be able to get fixed or to feel like the power is not within them. And my thing is about giving the power back to the client and about them actually feeling like it's them that has the control, not that they need to go elsewhere. They don't need to always go and research by Dr. Google and find out what's going on with them. You type in, you've got a headache on Google, and before you know it, you've got a brain tumor and you're suffering with it's pretty bad. And I was that person, that was me. I lived I struggled with health anxiety for years. And I didn't really realize I did, but I struggled with it for a really long period of time. And it was through working through my own stuff that I worked a way to heal it, I guess.
So I said just off pod then, having seen a little bit of your story, and we'll probably get into it, but having seen just a little bit of it, I suppose a lot of that resonated with me growing up, in terms of, some of the scrapes and some of the feelings, and then kind of what you turn to, and then that realization period, I suppose, that something hits you and you go, oh, wow, I'm wasting my life here. I can do so much better. And I think it would resonate with a lot of people because, you see Instagram and it's all happy, smiley faces and nice watches, holidays. And this year actually it's just thrown all that out the window. And I think people are becoming a bit more grateful, have a bit more gratitude around the smaller things which aren't as material, but probably mean a lot more. So seeing family, seeing friends, connecting with people socially and stuff. I'd love to, if you don't mind, I'd love to chat about your background and you're in Australia, south of Sydney at the moment, but you grew up in London. Like you said, you were in Cardiff for a bit. I'd love to go through your story a bit before you kind of hit this journey that you're on now, and talk about
Sure.
some, if you don't mind, talk about some of those struggles, because I think that, especially in men, we don't talk enough, and to learn about other people's stories and how far they've come. It's quite inspiring.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you, man. I mean, I think my Instagram took a turn over the last few years as I was evolving and changing, maybe even before that, because I noticed how much there is, where I put up a post the other day, sad people with happy photos,
Yeah, I wrote that
and
down. So
and
true.
it is, isn't it? And it's
Yeah,
like it's with this highlight reel, and now you go on Instagram, and they've actually got a reels in the
yeah,
explore. It's just reels after reels of all these people like showing off the best parts of their life. And don't get me wrong, it's all, you don't want to be negative all the time, you don't want to be depressing all the time, I guess, and
yeah,
such. But we want to be real, and we want to be our authentic self, and that's where sort of my journey came from. Was I was like, no, I'm just going to tell my story how it is.
yeah,
And since I've done that, people have resonated with it, especially
yeah,
men, and my
yeah,
work that I do now is I do lots of men groups. So I run a man tribe over here in Australia, and I run work with other boys in growing up and helping them to attach to their feelings and be able to talk and open up and be around other brothers that are dealing with the same stuff.
yeah,
Well, their own stuff, but maybe a bit of a supporting aspect. So, Mikey, if you came down, you had your own thing going on, you talk about it, no one's there to help you, no one's there to fix you, no one's
yeah,
there to give you support, but we're just here around each other, and we connect with each other, and how men can really actually heal a lot just from talking, because we push everything down so much because we have to be men, we have to be strong, we have to show that we're hard all the time, and
yeah,
we can't really cry, or we can't do anything that shows to be weak or vulnerability. But what I've learned over the last couple of years is that vulnerability is a superpower, and the more vulnerable that we can show that we can be at times of crisis, the more we've got a chance to actually being open to healing properly and working
yeah.
on the things that are bothering us. And I guess, to answer your question, went on a tangent. To answer
No,
your
that's fine.
question was how my story sort of started was, I was just brought up in a really rough area in North London, in Tottenham,
Yeah,
and it was just rough, Just I don't know if you know Tottenham. Tottenham's Edmonton.
yeah,
It's just not the greatest of areas, and I grew up in the '90s there, and it wasn't that bad, but there was no social media back then, so I can't imagine what it's like for the young kids now growing up in that
yeah,
area with social media. Like it's mad. But I was just getting into scrapes all the time. There was always guns and shooting and stabbings, and there was muggings. I got mugged a couple of times, and it's just sort of a rite of passage that you just sort of dealt with. It's just like you talk to other lads and be like, "Oh yeah, when did you get mugged? What age was that? Or when did you get stabbed? What age was that?" And
mad.
most,
How old were you when that was happening?
oh, well, I was born there, so I didn't really know any different. So when I used to go to primary school, there was always like, I'd have to step over heroin addicts and stuff to get to my auntie's house. I was pretty
Jesus.
just standard, but I didn't know any different.
Yeah, of course.
I had no mirror to compare it to, so it's just sort of standard. And then as I got older and you get into your sort of teenage years, you start, going out with other, with kids and other kids your age, but you're all doing sort of naughty stuff. And naughty kids in London are probably a bit, different, like also other city kids. It just can be a bit,
Yeah,
it can get a bit wild a bit quickly.
yeah,
Um, so I think after my last mugging, I was about 14. It was traumatized me quite a lot. It was made me feel really trapped, and made me feel really vulnerable, and made me feel really weak. And my persona then for the next 15 years was all about making that never happen again. So making myself into the biggest, scariest person I could. And that
yeah,
was through any means necessary. I done everything possible to make myself unapproachable to people, cover myself in tattoos, get myself to it, take loads of gear, take loads of everything to make myself big and make myself like look a certain way. So I was never going to be hurt again in that way.
yeah,
But then also I was told from the media and from, men's health magazines and all these things that for me to be liked as a person, I needed to look a certain way. I needed to have abs, or I needed to have a big chest and big arms, and I needed to look like that all the time. So then, even when I didn't feel like it anymore, I was still pressured to. I felt pressured to constantly keep it up. So probably for about the last 5-6 years of my sort of lifestyle, I was just in a really bad sort of state, doing lots of drugs and lots of in a bad way. And then eventually things started to move and started to change,
What was it? Because again, I think that you see in the gym, not so bad now. I think YouFit is all right. There's not many egos in there now. You still see one or two, but the gym I'm in, obviously I think at times, I suppose there probably were some people like that, but now they've brought in, the CrossFit containers and stuff like that. It's a lot less ego and a lot more hard work. And I think that stereotype is probably going a little bit from sort of gym, not YouFit, but gym in general, roid heads, into actually we want to be healthy and we want to be able to move as best as possible. And it's not about your 1 rep maxes anymore or whatever. What was it like? Did you do all that because it was high? It was like that was your force field, that was your wall that no one could get into, and because you looked like that and you felt like that. And I suppose when you are, I've seen pictures of you're a big old lump when you're, jacked up a bit. It's almost, you've got that swag about you as well. I can imagine as you're walking around, knowing that you're a big guy, knowing that if someone has to be really tasty if they want to have a go. Did that just then suppress everything that you were actually feeling?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was. I wouldn't necessarily say that I felt that I had that sort of ego, but I definitely had a facade that was keep the fuck away from me.
Yeah.
Because that's what I felt like inside. This is after years of doing deep work to find out what uncovered. But you said, was it a force field? It definitely was my armor.
Yeah.
It was my armor that I sort of put on myself. I used this analogy the other day that I felt like I was a snail. I was a little slug on the inside with a big shell that protected me. So really, I was just this slug. And on the outside, I was this big shell that I was to protect me, really. And that's what it sort of did. Yeah.
It's interesting because I think, again, people who follow this but may not know me very well, just see my social media, for example, would probably say, I'm this, that, and the other. And actually, growing up, I very much feel like I felt those same emotions as you at times. Putting on the brave face or putting on the facade. For me, it's, I work for Capital FM. We're fortunate and lucky enough that we do loads of hospitality normally at various sports games. So I'm normally the one that used to get the party going and everyone get drunk and have a great time. But I would almost put that suit of armor on for that day and go, no one can come at me today because it's my day. I'm going to make sure everyone else has a great day. And then the next day, everyone else had a great day, but I'm feeling like shit. And it gets boring and repetitive. And then other things in life, whether, family and all that other stuff. No one ever sees that side of it. You just get on with it on your own. But that's quite dangerous. And, obviously you look at male suicide and stuff like that. More needs to be spoken about and more needs to be done. And I think that the more we talk about that, hopefully, the less people feel the pressure to, is it fitting in? Is that the right term? I don't know. But to be liked, I feel like we've got this need to be liked by everyone. And actually, not everyone likes you. And it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird.
We've all got different conditioning, we're bundles of conditioned behavior.
Yeah.
So the way we're brought up and the way that we are conditioned by our parents and conditioned by the people around us, and we just grow up as these conditioned sort of beings doing certain things. And it's a struggle for those people that live in that sort of conditioned mindset that can't get away from it. And, male suicide is huge at the moment. It is big. It's really big over here. And that's sort of what prompted me to go and do the Man Tribe thing. It was that if more men do talk about stuff, and we have seen a shift over the last few years that men are talking about more and more things, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they want to go to social media and talk about it. They
Yeah.
just might, people want to keep that stuff private. But the more that we sort of have it a bit open, that they do just talk, that when they do see their mate and they go, how you doing? You go, yeah, good. You actually go, nah, do you know what, man? I'm feeling a bit shit.
Yeah.
And this is because of this. If you're wanting to talk about it, rather than just keep suppressing it and hiding it and, going home and then suppressing your emotions with food or drugs or drink or sex or anger or another form of distraction and suppression. We're just constantly going round and round in a sort of like, the game Whack-A-Mole, where like a little mole pops up and we whack it with a hammer. It's like we put another addiction on top of it, or we have another thing on top of it. Before you know it, we've got all the moles popping out at once. We can't control it. And I think that's sort of one of the biggest things that we're sort of seeing, is that it's definitely coming out. And then the main thing with guys is that we sort of just do things. So that's why suicide is so big, I suppose. We just get on and we just do it. If we're going to not be around anymore, we just do it. And that's why it's really important to just feel that we can start to talk to each other.
Yeah.
And just chat openly. Like, Mike, if you're struggling, you just let me know and we have a talk about it. And I didn't really know that I had mental health stuff, though, for years. I didn't really know. I think I knew, but I hid it. I don't think no one would come around and say, oh, Ryan struggles with this or that. I don't think.
It's taboo, wasn't it?
It was taboo, and especially like growing up in the 90s and stuff.
Yeah,
I
say
so much has changed since then. Like it's only the last 10, 15 years we've had gay marriage. Like it's so much has changed in regards to that. I was walking around before phones were out, and I had a little pager. My mum would message me on a pager to come home. Like it's fucking.
I remember those days. I was born in '85, so again, like I grew up in Plymouth, which not nowhere near as big as London, but a city with a bit of a reputation, a bit chavvy, can be a bit tasty in certain areas. And I grew up.
I used to go out in Plymouth quite a lot.
Yeah, I grew up in a couple of those areas that are quite tasty, and I remember like in school, like if you show weakness, you'd end up getting filled in, or like. I went to an all boys school as well, which part of the reason, it's probably why I'm still a bit immature at times and find stupid shit funny. But there was no weakness, and if you showed weakness, you were fucking dust. Like you had to be. I got bullied a bit, and until one day I turned around and filled this fucking kid in, literally just filled him in because I'd snapped, and no one touched me again then. But it took 2 or 3 years of taking that for me to snap, and instead of just like addressing it in the beginning, like you said, you just suppress it. And like I would always turn to food, and then as I got older, I turned to drink and other stuff as well. It's easy to fall down that spiral and find yourself in a dark hole, and at those times, it's quite easy to see there's no way out. And I can understand having, this is not my story, I suppose, but I can understand how people get in that mindset and feel like the world is better without them and they're a burden on life, and how it does get to those dark places, because I've been there myself. And it takes for me, it took something to happen, which I won't go into now, but it took something to happen for me to literally sit there and ring someone and go, 2 people actually, and go, I need help today and tomorrow. And I'm all in if you can help me. What was it that turned, again, if you don't have to talk about it, but I know that you had some personal traumas with the family. Was it that turned your life around for the better?
I'd say that was part of. I'd say there was never. A lot of people ask me what was the catalyst that sort of changed. It wasn't necessarily one particular thing. It was a multitude of a collection of things that sort of just pushed me into going, right, there's another way to do things here. So I got really badly addicted to drugs, and my mum was ill with cancer. My dog died. That I was like. A big thing to me. I had him for 10 years. He was like just me and him sort of relationship. My nan died. I split up with my partner, and this all happened within like the space of a month. So for like my nervous system, my body, and all this sort of responses, traumatic responses, I didn't know how to deal with them. So I just kept taking more drugs, taking more drugs. And then eventually got to a point when the drugs ran out and they stopped working. And it was
Yeah.
like, and I've got, I've got a reasonable education, and I have an understanding about how things work, and knew it was going to be not keep going. I couldn't keep going the way I was going. And I remember sitting in the car, just sort of like shaking, having withdrawals. And I called a friend who's a doctor, said, "What's happening to me, man?" He was like, "You're having withdrawals. Like, you need to sort this shit out." And so I then started this sort of process of coming off drugs and coming off prescription medications and all the other things that I was addicted to at the time. And throughout that process of coming off the drugs and through seeing my mum being ill and healing the stuff that happened in that moment in time, I started to find other ways of doing things. I started to acquire a tool bag of tools that I can use through those stressful times. Anxiety is not a disorder. It's a symptom with a root cause. It's there to be. There's always a reason why we have it. We don't just wake up with anxiety. We don't just wake up with depression, or we don't wake up with addiction problems. They manifest themselves for a reason. It's normally a suppressed feeling or an emotion or whatever's going on. There's always a reason. When I work with mental health clients, it could be anything from nutritional deficiencies to diet to trauma to microbiome imbalances and gut stuff. It could be anything. So it's very multi-layered. So for me, it was picking apart all these things, and I had to start feeling my emotions and feeling what was going on within my body, because everything for me growing up was about not feeling what was in my body. So that's why I weight trained to such an extreme level. That's why I tattooed, because I never really felt. So when I trained and when I had my tattoo and I got tattoos, or I got in scraps or got in fights, or I'd done professional fighting or whatever, it would be so I could feel again.
Yeah.
So for me personally, my journey was about starting to feel what was going on for me, and actually, rather than avoid it, actually feel it. Because that was what the drugs and the suppression did. They suppressed it, so I didn't feel it.
Yeah, you're in a different. Sorry, you're in a different world, obviously, when you're taking that amount of sort of drugs and trying to get away from the day-to-day life, I suppose. And again, I completely understand that. People turn to different. I used to play rugby, but I didn't really train very hard for it. I just played it because it was social, and for me, actually, I preferred the Saturday night out rather than the 2:30 kickoff. And that's why I did it. Like loads of my mates, professional rugby players, I was never good enough, but I never tried to be good enough either. For me, it was just let's get out on the piss, and you're a good group of lads. And I did a bit of boxing, not to that level, but again, there's something enlightening. Is that the right word? Exhilarating. You find out who you really are when you get punched in the face in a 10x10 ring. Because at that point it's you and them, and it's not about who's more macho, or it's actually so tactical and thought-provoking that it doesn't matter how big or hard you are. If they're better than you, chances are they'll fucking beat you, unless there is a huge sort of weight difference. And I don't know, like lots of things happened in my life at one particular time, and I'd stopped playing rugby at that point, and that's where I turned to boxing. And again, I used that discipline. For me, was the big thing of that training for that 10 weeks. And I lost 10 kilos. I'd got to 125, but an out of shape 125 kilos, which, what's that, 20 stone? I'm 6'1". I carry it quite well, but it's far too big for me. And, I lost 10 kilos, and that discipline, amongst other things, and helping. But I think the biggest thing for me at the time was friends had noticed. And whilst I kept saying, no, I'm fine, well, actually getting smashed on a Thursday night and not turning up to work Friday, and then not trying in work and other things like that was showing, but I was just ignoring it. And it wasn't until a few times, one or two particular people had said, are you okay? You okay? You okay? Come on, you're going to get sacked soon. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. And then like a week later, I turned around then and was like, I need help. Did your friends... did they know about the addictions? Were they, because again, some people just turn a blind eye. Are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. Wicked. Sound. See you later. And they're happy just to go about their own business. Were there friends or anyone that kind of saw it, but you were pushing them away as well? Or did you just hide it from everyone?
I sort of hid it from myself. So it wasn't until I started to admit it to myself. I don't know how I hid it from myself, to be honest, because I knew it must have been a problem. But uh, so when I did start talking to a couple of friends about it, um, they, you know what guys are like, sort of, they're just like, "Oh, you all right?" I'm like, "Yeah, okay." And I
Yeah.
just wouldn't, it was never open to it. Whereas I'm in a different mindset now, whereas if that happened and I was in that sort of way, I'd probably be open to talking about it. If they felt open to wanting to hold that space for me to talk about it, I don't want to just bombard people with what's going
Yeah.
on. You don't want to bring other people's energy down with that. If I've got friends now that I can talk to, that if stuff's going on in my life and I need to speak to them, I can say, "Are you free? I've got this stuff going on," and they can make themselves available then, rather than me dumping it on them all
Yeah.
the time. Because then when people are going through their own stuff, they don't want you always dumping it on them. So I always make sure that the people that I'm going to talk to about anything are in a good space as well to be able to talk about it. But you
Yeah.
mentioned like in the 10 by 10 ring, and he said it's just you versus them. And yeah, I agree with you completely. And I think that it's more so you versus you. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
you in your own head, and you versus like it's you that's wanting to do this, and you that's, it's not really necessarily. I think we focus on the you versus the enemy, but actually it's always you versus your own self, and you're your own enemy most of the time. And that's how we sort of spend our days and our lives inside our own heads, not feeling anything, constantly like trying to get away from it, you know.
Yeah.
um yeah, and it can be very, very tricky with getting your way out of that. But you can. There is a way from doing it. I've done it, and I help people do it. And it's not easy. You've got to want to do that deep work. You've got to want to find out what's going on for you. But there's always a reason. You can always do something to improve your situation that you're in. Always. No matter how bad it is, no matter if you're bedbound with illness
Yeah.
or you're struggling so bad with your mental health that you don't even want to leave the house and you're agoraphobic, you can always do one step at a time. I'll give you an example. I worked with a client who was so agoraphobic that they wouldn't even be able to look out the window because it would give them anxiety. So they had to close the windows down, and they would never leave the house ever. So they had to have people deliver food, and that's how they lived for ages. And we just started with doing the smallest, simplest thing, like looking at the door handle and doing that bit of exposure therapy. And then
Yeah.
slowly, over the time, with all the other modalities and the other therapies that they were doing alongside it, started to go outside, and now they're back at work and they're doing their own thing. But that's down to them feeling like they can do it. And if you can just see that one little bit of improvement in your life, if you're feeling that really shit about yourself, and you can just do one good thing or say one good thing about yourself a day, it will slowly build. It's the act of gratitude.
Yeah.
And most men and women talk really shit about themselves nowadays. You hear about it all the time. Or I'm fat, or I've like this, or I've got this cellulite, or I'm shit at this, or I'm really stupid. They always have this negative self-talk, so that
Yeah.
most of the time they don't have someone else joking about it to them.
Mate, that's 100% me. 100%. I've done it. I've done it through the last, well, I'm 35 now, so I'd say the last 15, 17, 20 years. I've always been a big good guy. I've never really looked after myself properly. And only now, this last couple of years, my weight goes up and down. But only, this year especially, you mentioned gratitude there. You know, I think everyone in the world, especially in the UK at the moment, and I'm sure Australia is the same. I haven't spoke to my sister there. People are losing jobs. They're taking pay cuts. Life isn't as good at the moment. We're being locked down. We're not able to see family as much. We're not able to see friends as much. People are ended up in hospital.
Mm,
Gyms are closing, which is huge for lots of people mentally and physically. But actually, when you take a step back from all that, and they're all not excuses, but they're all things you can't control a lot of the time. I can't control COVID. I can't control whether the gym's open or closed. But what I can control is what I should focus on. And I think one of those is actually looking at what you do have, and gratitude comes into that. And for me this year, and I think having seen social media amongst people I follow and I'm friends with, everyone seems to be a bit more grateful for what they do have this year, and mindsets are potentially changing. And like I've tried to, at least once a week, just stupid little things like put out a tweet and a post just saying, "Fuck, today's been yesterday. Like yesterday was a tough day, but if you've had a tough day, drop me a message and let's have a chat about it." And then one of my biggest clients at Catflap messaged me yesterday. Do you know X, Y, and Z in this particular industry? Because I know someone who needs to talk to them because they're having a tough time. And I was like, yeah, actually, I might know a few people. And that made me feel a bit better that I was able to just help someone else. Like I wouldn't post that then on social media, like the people who give a homeless person a sandwich but film it for Instagram. But just that one little thing made my day better, that I was able to put someone on the next step. They haven't climbed the mountain, but they've just taken that next step.
You
And
planted a seed.
if more people could just take that one step a day you mentioned just now, just the next step and the next step, actually people would realize their lives aren't that bad, and we're all in control of making them a little bit better as well.
I mean, I think once we realize that we're not actually in control, and we're not actually in control of anything, we can't control nothing that happens in our environment. We think we can. We think we can control this, we can control, but anything can happen at any moment. We have no control over that. We have to end up being like, toy boats on the sea and just sort of bob up and down and just deal with the waves as they come. And, you're going to have big waves sometimes, and sometimes it's going to be really gentle. But being able to deal with those waves and how they come in is sort of I found for me has been the key for me. And finding in every event, it all has a significance, and there's always a silver lining behind it, no matter how negative it is. We could always find it. So no matter what happens in my day, for example, I was going to the shop the other day to do my shopping, went into the end of these random bollards they have in Australia here. And they had this little sort of bollard where the bonnet of my car got caught. And then the whole bonnet came off. And instead of how I would have reacted a while ago, I would have been like, oh, fucking hell, this has happened, that's happened.
Yeah.
It's weird how I've noticed how my thought process has changed over the time. Is that I go, oh, that just happened. Okay, so what have I learned from that? And what's the silver lining that I can find in it? So I do that and find the silver lining in it. Still annoyed that it's happened, but looking for that sort of, that small bit of gratitude and that small silver lining in any event, no matter how negative. COVID's been a shitstorm for everyone, right? And it's still probably going to be into next year, right? To some level, it's going to change and adapt like the wave, and us be in the boat. We've just got to sort of bob up and down with it, right? But we can all find an amazing silver lining in this. And I'm sure you've got some, Mike, and I'm sure that everyone, we've found some significance in the shitstorm that sort of happened. And that's sort of how I try to spend my sort of day, is no matter how negative a situation is, I find that silver lining and find that really small bit of gratitude.
The naysayers and the people who are maybe of a different mindset, generation, whatever that might be, would listen to that potentially and go, soft generation coming through, or they, the naysayers might say you can't be happy all the time. When people talk about yoga and hippies and that perceived lifestyle and mindset, which we all know, anyone with a bit of education knows is actually a bit of bollocks. But people looking from the outside will go, well, he can't be happy all the time. He can't be like that all the time. Like, how do you? It's easy to say, I find that bit of silver lining, that bit of gratitude. How do you snap yourself out of that stinking mood where you feel like the whole day has gone against you and the chips are down, and they might genuinely be down? So you spoke about, family trauma earlier and losing loved ones. How would you react to something like that now compared to kind of how you did back then?
You don't find a silver lining in the moments all the time. No way. And you're definitely not happy. Like, that is, I think happy is a bullshit consumer marketing ploy that everyone thinks that when they buy the next thing, they're going to be happy. When they get this six pack, they'll be happy. And when they get here, here, and here, they'll be happy. Happiness is a bit of bullshit to me personally. For me personally, I can still have joy in my day, but contentment, being content with what's going on right now. And if I do have a shit storm that happens and appears, and a really horrible death in the family or something that I've got to deal with, I won't find a silver lining in that, why it's happening. It's about looking at the silver lining in hindsight.
Yeah.
For me, pain is a teacher, and it taught me a lot throughout the last couple of years. My pain has taught me to do so much. It taught me growth.
Yeah.
Grew from all of it. So for those that are in that shitstorm right there and then, I mean, for me, I try to just remember that it won't last, and that impermanence is the thing, and it won't last forever. Nothing does.
Yeah.
And it will. And if you're making some steps to go into the right direction, then you will get out of it. Because I was in that bit, and I thought I was never going to get out of it for months and months on end. I was going through withdrawals and going through things, and I was having severe panic attacks and anxiety attacks, low mood and terrible low mood, but I was still going to work, putting on a mask and a smiley face, trying to pretend to be all happy. But the thing is that you can move through it. You can get out of that sort of state, but it does take time. You've got to want to put the work in.
Work there. I'm glad you just mentioned that. You said just now about, we can't really control everything. And if, there are things that are going to be out of control, which impact on everything we do. But to play devil's advocate, I do feel like there are things that anyone can do to help themselves probably a bit better. Things like work ethic, hard work, read. If you're going to read, there's 4 or 5 different types of books that you could read. One could be porn mag, one could be a thriller, one could be a comedy, but one could be self-development, and actually just implementing something like that, which doesn't cost a lot. You can pick up a book on eBay for a couple of quid and have that delivered to your door. Amazon, Kindle, everything's so accessible nowadays. But those little things I feel that people could probably do a bit more of in order to help themselves a little bit better just on that journey.
Completely agree. And whatever helps, whatever, everyone's different and needs those different things. And what helped me won't be the same what would help you, Mike. So if someone could read 5 pages of a self-help book that they might take one little snippet or one word from, then great. Sometimes I can read a whole book but only take one sentence away from it. And that's cool. I'll take that instead of trying to expect more from stuff. But hard work is. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for my work ethic and my determination to want to be a better human being. And for wanting to be my best, trying to at least go towards the light of my best self.
So talking of your best self there, obviously, you are helping loads and loads of people deliver themselves a better lifestyle and a better way of life. How did you get into that in terms of learning, and have you done qualifications in it, or have you literally taken your experiences and turned those into positives with the help of the internet and other people, other coaches, and that hard work and a want to learn?
Bit of both, bit of all of that, really, to be honest, Mike. Like a bit of all of it. It wasn't necessarily one thing. I've got a degree in dietetics. I'm a dietitian by trade, so I can diagnose. I can diagnose and prescribe things for people and people with illness. And then I studied gut microbiology as well. So my background is actually in science, but I don't promote that because I don't want to be put into a box of that's what I deal with. When really it's a lot bigger picture. And then the rest was learning through my own experience and through working with other practitioners and great coaches and speaking to other people that are really high up in this sort of world. And speaking with other people that do healing work in regards to healing in the sense of, big cancer centers where they work with fasting clients and giving them organic foods and different biohacks and looking after their sleep and stuff to help them get better. So talking to some of these experts and actually taking such an interest in it because my mum had cancer, it took me down that road, that passion and that belief
Yeah.
to strive for it. So it was a mixture of a lot of things as such. Like a lot of people say, did I do a course? To be really honest, there's people that you can go and do a course, but as you know, you can read a book on being a car mechanic, but until you actually do it, you're not going to be able to be a car mechanic.
Everything's just passing the test until you actually get out there and do it yourself. Learning to
Yeah, it's
drive.
like,
Learning to drive.
yeah, I
Perfect
was
example.
literally going to say the same thing.
Yeah, you learn to pass the test, then you learn to drive.
Yeah, exactly. You know, so it's like reading a book on boxing. You know, we sort of know each other through Faya and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like reading a book on boxing and actually getting punched in the face is different.
Yeah.
So it's for me, it was for me learning personally, it was through experience. I had to learn it, I had to experience it. And all of the things I talk about in my pillars of health when I'm working with a client, I've experienced them, done them, researched them, spoke to experts, tested it. You know, I've done science studies on both aspects of sleep. I've written a book on sleep. And it's important for me to experience everything that I'm asking someone to do. There's no point me telling a client to go and do a 5-day fast without me knowing the background, the science, and what it's actually doing to the physiology and biology of the person and what's happening to them internally and how it feels. I've done that myself. You know, I've healed my own gut. And then through doing so, I've then been able to help others do that.
So I'd love people to take some stuff away from this chat. Not just men who might find themselves in the same situation as we've found ourselves in at times, but also sort of anyone really, girls as well. I want to talk just about a few different subjects and talk to me about it, why people should care more about it and what can they do. But I appreciate this could go on for months in terms of a chat because there's obviously so much. You mentioned gut health there and food. And you've also then mentioned things like anxiety isn't a disorder, it's a byproduct of environments. Why is food and gut health so important to someone? And, well, yeah, do that first, and then we'll talk about how we can help do it better.
Yeah, sure. So I talk about gut health quite a bit. You know, that's sort of my area of what I studied and through doing it myself. And our gut is our first home for all of our organisms. It's bacteria. They send signals to the rest of our brain and to the rest of our body. People believe that this is our first brain, but I'm a big believer in that actually the gut is the first brain. The gut is where it actually all starts to get signals from. You know, our neurotransmitters, all our calm down and feel good and happy hormones are stimulated in the bacteria in our gut. So 90% of our serotonin is made in our gut, not actually in our brain. So it's only by what that's stimulated by in our gut that gets a signal up there. Our immunity stems from our gut. Skin issues will stem from our gut. Hormone imbalances, all of these things, energy issues can all stem from the bacteria and the things that we consume to make us feel better. So you've got to remember that we come into the world, depending on how we're born, with a full, good, rich microbiome and bacteria in our gut. But it depends on how we then live the rest of our lives and how that flourishes. Now, if you lived a life like me, where you're drinking, living in a bad environment, lots of pollution, drinking tap water, eating conventional meats and foods and all the other things that cause havoc. And
that'd be the same for most people, like 99% of people, surely.
Yeah, it is. It pretty much is. And this is why we're seeing this massive rise in autoimmune issues and gut issues and chronic anxieties and all these sort of things. Don't get me wrong, they're all very, there's lots of layers to why we might have some of those symptoms. But the biggest thing that we can sort of do if we're going to do anything for our health is work on the food we are putting in and the toxins that we have got in our body and our environment on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
You know, what we put on our body, for example, goes in our body. You know, and what do? We spray deodorant cans with aerosol that's got flammable on it, it's got aluminium in it. That all causes a big stress on our gut, and our liver has to detoxify that. So then over time, it starts to build up and build up and build up, and then slowly get worse. And then this is where you see these issues. So when people come to me, they're in a pretty bad state. They're constipated for 3-4 days. They've got diarrhea. They've got skin issues, eczema, psoriasis, acne, chronic fatigue. and low mood and depression, and they can hardly they don't know how way out. And if there's one thing that someone can do for their gut health, there's probably not one thing, it's probably a lot, but make sure that the food that we're putting in is as best quality as we can sort of get it. Think of it as an investment. It's going to give you dividends back. Don't go for the processed or the lower cost food just because it's lower cost. Go for the food that's going to give you the biggest, what's the word I'm looking for? Bang for your buck. That's it.
Return on investment.
Return on investment and bang for your buck. So we want to look at it as that sort of investment on ourselves. I could go on and on and on.
No, I know completely. The thing that I always see is, people who a supplement company will do a detox, for example. Juice detox or cleanse the body or whatever. And there's again, looking at some of your work, prescription drugs, which sometimes you might need because your body is in that much of a state where you do need antibiotics or particular prescription drugs, but also then natural remedies. And again, I don't think as a modern society, especially in the Western world, you look at America and the UK and other places like that, I don't think we give ourselves the best chance of being fighting fit. Lots of emphasis on takeaways and smoking, drinking, and like you said, processed foods and stuff. I don't necessarily buy organic, but I will always try and buy, instead of I don't know, a curry or something like that, or a spaghetti bolognese or whatever, buy the raw ingredients and make it from scratch rather than the jars or the pots or the ready meals. But lots of people don't. They will just go for the fast, cheap, convenient option because they're feeding families of 4 or it's just their lifestyle or whatever. So I do feel that we don't help ourselves. And what are some of the things people can do which are fairly easy to implement but might just take a bit of time before you start seeing results? I would assume something like drinking water, for example, like drinking enough water.
Yeah, that would be a great one. A great one to start, making sure that we're drinking good quality water as well. And we're not just getting it straight out the tap and drinking all the water. Our water, especially in the UK, I had it tested, has got 372 different contaminants in it. And what does chlorine do when we go into a swimming pool? You've gone down to the bay and gone into the swimming pool. You smell it as soon as you walk in the door. You smell the chlorine. Chlorine is made to kill bacteria. Chlorine is in the water that we drink. Right? It's probably one of the biggest contaminants in tap water. What does chlorine do? It kills bacteria. But when we drink it, what's in our gut? The bacteria, the microbiome that gives us some functions for the rest of our body. So we're taking these huge glugs and consumptions of stuff that our body's going to have to deal with at some point. So if you can't afford a super duper filtration system, get yourself some type of filtration system. Get a countertop type Brita filter. Do anything that you can just do sort of damage limitation so that you can then not have sort of some of the impacts that you would have on water. This I'm talking about is what you could do for the bare minimum. So some of my clients can't afford some of that stuff. And then I'm making sure we're getting the right minerals in that water. So you can get great Celtic sea salt, which you can get on Amazon. It's £10 a bag, lasts you for ages. You put a pinch of that in every litre. It will hydrate your body. It gives you all the minerals that your body needs. And it's naturally what you would get on a natural spring water. So there's your sort of water you can sort of look at. Second thing I would probably say is breathing. So something as simple as breathing is so important for our gut and its motility. We spend our lives stressed, breathing through our chest rather than breathing slowly and deeply into our belly, getting our gut really into it. We're always clenched, super stressed, our chest super tight, and our shoulders are up here from stress, and then we're sitting down in cars all the time, and then we're on our phones with our neck down. We're always in this sort of position, and we're never concentrating on how we're breathing and our bodies are breathing. So really taking some time, set a timer on your phone to go off every hour, like a little vibrate or something that reminds you to just take a moment, take a big, deep belly breath in through your nose and out through your nose. And that's it. And how good's that feel? Like it's
I love it.
takes 2 seconds to do,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
people think you've got to spend loads of money on supplements and all this. These companies that are making money on this, on people's predicaments that they're in.
yeah,
Here you go, buy this detox supplement, buy this, buy that, buy this, buy. Right? I get it. I understand it. That people are trying to make money, but the problem is that they need to be their own healthcare detective and practitioner to actually learn about what's in the products they're taking.
yeah,
Look on the back of the ingredients. Let's say, for example, you've got a family of 4. They really can't afford to be buying whole foods. I believe everyone can, or they don't have the time, right? Single mum with loads of kids. If you're going to buy processed foods, at least buy processed food, but it's got minimal ingredients. So I stay a rule of 5 ingredients. 5 ingredients. If it's got more than 5, don't buy it. It doesn't matter what those necessary. You can have really bad contaminant ingredients. Palm oil and sunflower oil, they all cause inflammatory responses.
yeah.
But for those people that just are going to buy a processed stuff to have a meal, just look for the ones with the least amount of ingredients possible. So again, it's damage limitation. You can always do something.
Yeah, I was like growing up. I've not come from anything. We grew up a working class family. Mum had a couple of jobs and dad was at work and stuff. And there was always fresh food on the table. A whole chicken would last a couple of days. Veg, potatoes, like what you can get by, I suppose. So it does frustrate sometimes when you see, like, I suppose, like, you see kids and you think they've got no hope. This is bad. I know this sounds really fucking bad and judgmental, but you go pick your daughter up from school, or pick my daughter from school or whatever, and you see other kids, and then you just see the environment they're in immediately around who's around them. You're like, the kid's got no hope. There's going to have to be an intervention at some point for that kid to go, I don't want to be like this anymore.
Yeah.
And it's tough because, I completely get, if you can't afford organic, from the butchers or from wherever you might go or whatever, because it is more expensive. And unfortunately, we're in an age now where a Mars bar is cheaper than a banana. But there are definitely still things you can do. I completely get that. One of the things you've mentioned a few times is around sort of, I suppose, is it social media or whatever you mentioned then about the detoxes and exploitation? I suppose, again, we're living in that Western world where everything, people want it now. They don't necessarily, look at high streets versus Amazon or online shopping or, your Ubers. You don't want to drive anymore. You want an Uber. Just everything's about ease, isn't it? And instant access. Netflix, I want it now. I don't want to wait for the cinema. I don't want to go to Blockbuster anymore, which is why that's died.
Oh, I miss Blockbuster.
That used to be my Saturday night. You'd go, pick a film.
Don't talk to me about that.
You'd pick up some like sweets or
Doritos.
Yeah.
You probably get a game as well.
Yeah.
And
PlayStation 1.
You probably know you see it, man. You'd know the people in Blockbusters, and I used to take girlfriends down there, and it used to be like a date.
Yeah, man, hanging out there.
And nowadays, like, we don't have any of that. We're all indoors. We're not communicating with anyone. We're not speaking to anyone.
Yeah.
We're especially at the moment of lockdown, we're all isolated with things. So we're losing that. And I reckon in the next 2 years, cinemas will be completely closed down. Some cinemas are closing down already over here. I think some are in the UK.
Yeah.
By next year, you can see it slowly creeping in because they're starting to sell films on like Disney Plus and YouTube, and they're starting to sell them. So they're wanting Amazon. You to watch them at home. Yeah, man, and it's like, there's going to be no cinema soon. And we're all going to be stuck indoors, headphones on, looking at TVs and looking at screens. And it's just like, we need to get out into nature. We need to get out around people and start actually just communicating. I know there's a bunch of lads that I used to be friends with in the valleys in Wales that all go together, get out, go down to the beach and all do some cold water therapy and do some breath work.
Nice, yeah.
And these are proper lads that were doing, they were like valley lads that were normally doing drugs and stuff. But I think they've got to a point where they've actually gone, you know what, we're going to do something else. And you've got these big group of guys all going down, getting in the sea together. And I think it's amazing to see. And I'm seeing that.
Yeah, and me, like cycling and, you know, the rise. Again, I can't work out if there's more people doing it now or we just see it more because of social media. But outdoor
Probably
cycling, but yeah, maybe outdoor cycling, training for things like Ironman and stuff like that. Like I see it all the time now. And 10 years ago, I didn't see it at all. And I would say that it's like people, I feel like my age now, 35, I've kind of gone through where I've literally put my body into such a state where I got to a point where I was like, fuck me, I'll die soon if I don't fucking stop. You know, drinking a couple of times a week, doing all sorts of other stuff over the last 15 years, which, you know, legal and non-legal, do you know what I mean? And like, you know, I've got a little girl now, I want to be a better dad, get a better example. And I see like this, probably 10 years older than me now, a group of guys that are like, out on their bikes every Saturday for 6 hours, and it's a bit of a community, and it's kind of like you have to go through that lull to then find that path back to the peak again. I don't know if that sounds wanky, but I do feel like I see that quite a lot now.
I think that probably a bit of both, man. Probably that we see it on social media a bit, and we see it on. It's the fact that I think that some people are waking up to the idea that we all don't have to do the same thing we can all do different things and have different views. You know, let's talk, you go to YouFit and look at Jordan, for example. Jordan was had one of the best physiques back in the day. He was a bodybuilder, and he stopped all of that a long time ago. Yeah. And he started doing triathlons and cycling and stuff, and he does that now. And he doesn't have that physique, like I don't have the physique that I used to have, but we're both in happier states from doing different things. Yeah. I'm so glad and grateful that I did that, because dropping that image or that egoic image for me to constantly feel like I've got to look a certain way, I feel so much more comfortable in myself. You know, I go down to the beach now, and I've probably got more of a dad rig than I did.
Have 100%.
You know, but and this is what I think. It's about just being comfortable with what you are and who you are. As long as you're a healthy human being to the degree that's for you and your lifestyle, and you're trying your best to look after yourself in small ways, then that's cool. We all don't have to be like fucking physique models all the time.
No, I know.
On social media and stuff with this constant wanting to hold on to what we look like. It's just it's tiring.
It is tiring. That's why I'm good mates with the guys at Budgie Smuggler. It's all about the ordinary rig and the dad bod. So for me, that's perfect. And like, I've got to a stage now where
I've got Budgie Smugglers. I was about to literally say that when I go down to the beach talking about that. But I was like, no one wants to hear that.
So. Oh mate, so I did. So you know, in Australia they do the ordinary rig.
Yeah.
Have you seen that? So they did an ordinary rig in the UK, and I was in the top 10. So I got to know like Adam and Linny and a load of the guys, and I met Jared and Millie in the Manly store when I was over there. And I've got to a stage now where I don't give a fuck. Like, I went to a wedding a couple of years ago. It was in Italy, all professional rugby players, models, TV, and all that. And I said to my missus, like, we'll get matching Budgie Smugglers, mate. She's in good nick anyway. Like, she's in size 6, tremendous nick. But I've got a good old fucking derby on me. But I was like, fuck it, let's get the party going. Like, let's have a... And, like, I genuinely don't care anymore about doing that. Like, I'll happily wear budgies to the beach and that. Because what's someone going to say to me? Like, oh, fuck, you don't wear that, you fat cunt. Like, who cares, mate? Your life must be that boring or crap that you feel the need to try and get me down to make yourself feel a bit better. Like, fuck off. Like,
I don't think you'd hear that. Yeah, I think we think that we'd hear those things, but I don't think we ever do. I don't think no one's ever said anything to me like in any sort of way. But then I do forget I still look different to the everyday Australian over here.
Yeah.
You know, so like, but I don't think people will say much. And do you know what? If they do, just let them do their own thing. It's their path. It's their journey. You can't be stressed about or trying to care what other people think. No one's, like we said earlier at the beginning, is people aren't always going to like you. That's okay.
Yeah.
We don't I don't want everyone to like me. When I post my stuff up on social media now to help others, some people don't agree with it, whatever, and unfollow me. That's cool. Like, that's fine. I'm not here to be liked anymore. I'm here to just be me. And I'm going to change throughout the years like you are. You know, and we're going to change. We're going to have different views. You go scroll down my Instagram, you can see all the stuff I used to talk about then. And when I was
Yeah,
bodybuilding and doing strongman, and when I was doing MMA and all these things, my
yeah.
views were different. So as I progress as an individual, I feel that our views will change as well.
It's an evolution.
It is.
It is an evolution, isn't it? It's a growth journey, I suppose, whether people realise it or not. One of the things that everything you've spoken about today and I've spoken about all links back for me to mental health, but also social media and maybe its downfalls. Everything's on the phone now. Everything is instant access, and people want to put that highlight reel up of all the best things that are going on in their lives, but deep down, they might be in a ton of debt, or they're not happy, or the relationship's shit, or whatever it might be. Like, what can people do to not believe the highlight reel as such? What have you found? I saw a post you put up, and it was 10 or 12 different things that you've kind of slowed down on or quit completely to live.
Oh, the porn one.
Well, there was, I think,
quit
yeah,
porn.
you quit porn, yeah, but then you mentioned cold water therapy, cold showers, meditation and breathing, which anyone can do at any point of the day. It could just take 5 minutes, and there's apps. If you're that lazy and don't want to research it, there are literally apps you can get to help yourself. You've mentioned the whole foods and a mineral rich water, yoga. You've mentioned fasting. But what was it about the social media detox and even like quitting porn and stuff like that, like watching porn? Like, what was it about that that's helped you so much as well?
So with social media, as you probably know, and everyone that's probably listening to this knows that social media is like a vortex. You get stuck in it, before you know it, you're scrolling. First thing in the morning, you wake up in the morning, you're scrolling through people's stories, you're comparing yourself to others naturally, when your brain is in the best state possible for at least building new neural pathways to being in a positive mindset. So rather than waking up in the morning, comparing yourself straight away to, or the news or fear or other people dealing with stuff or anything, wake up and do your own thing. It might not have to be, you might not want to meditate, you might not be into any of that. That's cool. Maybe just go outside and get out in the sunlight, go for a walk, maybe do a bit of exercise first thing in the morning, and then sort of keep your phone away. So I keep my phone away, locked away in a box, like a little safe box. It's got a timer on it. Get it from Amazon. It's about 100 quid. So if you want to break it, you have to pay 100 quid every time. And you bang it in the box, and I put a timer in it, and I leave my phone, and I don't touch it for 16 hours of the day. And I use my phone for work. So when it goes into the evening, about 7, 8 o'clock, I put my phone away. I don't go on my phone until the next day, after I've done my routine in the morning, and then I go and do my work and whatever I've got to do for work-wise. And I definitely take 2 days or at least a day off of my phone completely. And that's for an opportunity for me to connect with my partner, see friends, get out in nature, chill out, give my nervous system a rest from constantly consuming, give our neurotransmitters and our brain a rest from that constant dopamine feed that we're getting from the hearts and the likes and the comments and the constantly looking at emails and all the other bits and bobs. Gives us our nervous system a time to just put aside, just for 1 day. It's 1 day a week where you can really sort of chill out. And with my clients that do that, they see so many benefits from it. They just feel so much more calmer. And then when they do go back on social media and when they go start scrolling through it, they've got a better awareness. They're not in it for so long. And they might go, well, actually, I don't know why I'm following that person anymore. I'll unfollow them. Or if someone makes you feel a bit bad on social media, or they're always posting up photos that maybe might not be the best for you in your mental state right now, you can unfollow them, and have things on your social media that when you look at your feed, invigorate you, feel your passion, give you more purpose, it's like a self-help book. We can fill the pages up though. That's the difference. We can fill the pages up with what we want, rather than constantly consuming other people's lives all the time. And why don't you just call up your friend, call up Mike and say, how you doing? Rather than looking at your social media of the proper photo that you've made to make yourself look really good, Not you as such, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, we all do it.
We all do. Yeah, of course we do. And I'm definitely a part of that as well. I've done that for many, many years. I tend not to nowadays. I tend not to just post anything, and I'm pretty raw on my social media with the things that I post about. But that's because that's what my message is about. You mentioned about quitting porn, and for me, I've been watching porn since I was about 12, mate. You know, I started watching porn as soon as the internet came out, and I had silly expectations on how I connected with my partner and what I expected to be like and look like, and what was healthy and what was not. And I'd watch porn every day, at least once a day. And me quitting porn was probably the best thing I ever did for my relationship with my partner. You know, I connect with the one I'm with, not some random person on porn, whatever Pornhub you're on. And the thing is with that is that again, it's a dopamine thing. We're always looking for more. So with porn, it's these silly expectations. You're watching these things, and whatever you're into, then it doesn't become enough, and then you're looking for more, looking for more, looking for more. And before you know it, you're looking at weird sort of bondage sort of, animal porn or whatever. You know, it's like it gets worse and worse and worse. It just didn't serve me anymore. So for me personally, I had to get rid of it, and the way I had to get rid of it was just stop doing it. And I haven't watched porn in months now, probably a year. But
I understand what you mean. Again, when you talk about like your partner or whatever, like you're almost always looking for that perfect, female rig. Obviously, it might be male or whatever, but that perfect female size 6 massive rack. Like, it's not real life guys with obviously like well endowed, and I'm just like, what's the fuck? What do you actually take from that? And then, like you said, you have silly expectations of what it should be like with you and your missus then in that relationship, sexually or whatever it might be. And it's no help to anyone. But no one ever stops to think about this. It's only when I saw you say that, and I was like, yeah, that's fucking, it makes sense. Like, it's simple, but no one ever talks about it really, or ever says it. Like, if I said to my mates now, like, lads, stop, they'd all fucking rinse me. Like, not that I would care, like, all right, whatever, don't then. Like, it does not bother me one
my mates
bit.
do. My mates do, of course they do. They're like, I ain't quitting porn. I was with all my mates are like, I was with you till you said quit porn. And like that's the thing. But for me, it was just a big thing for me. Like you said there, comparing yourself to men, right? To other men that you're seeing on porn. You got these women that are flustering over these men, and they're like all massive, and then they've got 12-inch dongs, and it's like you're comparing yourself to these people when you're a 14, 15-year-old boy. And then we grow up with this sort of low self-esteem that we've got to be this way, and we've got to have sex this way with this partner. And the women are the same as well. Girls are the same. They grow up watching porn from their friends, and maybe not the way men do, but then they expect different things from men, and it builds this weird expectation around sex, rather than it being like a nice partnership and actually about like connecting with the person you're with. It's more about like, doing the stuff you've seen in porn. Since you were since you were a little kid. And mate, I'm telling you this stuff, Mikey, because I lived it all. I've done all of that stuff.
Yeah, I think if we're honest, we all have. Like, I've not really ever told my story on any of these episodes. It's not so much about me, but like I said, a lot of, before we got chatting today, a lot of what I'd seen resonated with my upbringing, probably in just slightly different circumstances, maybe. But as a person, like, completely, like, I remember when I was in uni, the way girls were then, and then you look at Instagram now and girls coming through who are younger, fuck me, there is such a difference just in that 10-year gap of back then to now, 15 years. Like when I was single at the time as a bloke, I was like, fuck, I'm all in, here we go, like, come on, let's have a good time. But like this, I'll probably get rinsed for this, but like, I didn't enjoy it. Like the girls, and like I've had a lot of fun. The girls were always great. Like, they're nice people. Like, but you know, the next day or afterwards, you're like, it's kind of, it didn't fill that void, the emptiness, I suppose, of actually having a partner. And again, the thing with porn and like even Instagram now is you keep seeing, you know, people, or even the gym maybe, you know, you keep seeing these different types of people come through, whether they're boys and they're real good looking, fit, aesthetically pleasing men. You're like, fuck, wish I looked like him a bit more. Or girls that are in tremendous nick, or they're putting bikini pictures up or whatever it might be, and you're like, fucking hell, like, you know, have I, you know, if you're dating someone, have I made the right choice here? Because I can see better, can I do better? But it doesn't make them a better person. It doesn't mean you can have a happier relationship. And like my missus now, like, she's fucking great, superb with my daughter, pretty girl in good nick. But she compares herself to other girls. You know, she sent me a picture of a girl in the gym, you know, a few weeks ago that I did a class with, and she was like, "Fucking hell, why are you with me?" And I was like, "She looks the part, and she is actually a sound girl, the girl in question. But it doesn't mean like I want to just fucking jump ship because she looks alright. But because we want everything instantly, and there's instant access for everything nowadays, it's easier just to go, right, I'm just going to text them, we're over, and I'm just going to jump across to that next person, and then but nothing ever gets fulfilled, and you'll find out pretty quickly that you're actually not very happy at all."
Mm.
I went off on a tangent,
Yeah.
sorry there.
No, you don't apologize to me. That was great. Thanks for sharing it. Like, it's the thing is that I used this analogy the other day that we walk around like seas, you know, we walk around all our life like seas, and we try and find another person's walking around, and then that makes us whole, you know, whereas really what we want to be is we want to be whole before we even find someone else, not always looking for that external source to fill that gap. You know,
Yeah,
like we've got to come from otherwise it's always coming from a place of low self-esteem. And
yeah,
that's what I did. I was, you know, if you ask anyone that knew me in Cardiff, I was always with another girl in another relationship, another thing, because I needed the next best thing,
yeah,
exactly like
yeah,
you
yeah.
explained. And I never got to a point where it wasn't them that wasn't making me happy. I was just not happy inside.
Exactly that. Yeah,
And
it's
it
not
was
them. It's almost not fair on them then, because they end up just being a byproduct of your crappy lifestyle and
Of
feelings.
course, and they were probably the same to some degree, you know, like, and
Yeah,
we all bounce around each other, like doing this sort of random dance until we start to actually sort of work on ourselves to become a bit more whole. And now with my partner I'm with now, it's like, you know, instead of when it gets difficult, it gets tough, and we have to work through things together, I don't run off. We sit, we communicate, and we talk about it and chat about it, and we actually work together rather than me going, oh, do you know what, this is just too much for me, I'm going to run off now. And that's what
yeah,
I would normally used to do. I used to get to 2 years in a relationship, get the itch, make up some
yeah,
random thing in my head, and then I'd be with another girl and another new thing, and that new thing would distract me more from my own shit behind me that I was trying to ignore. You know, and that
yeah,
was the thing. It was like a monkey on my back all the time, and I was just focused, tunnel vision on the next thing: drugs, drink, women, strip clubs, whatever I was doing. It was
yeah,
that
yeah,
constant sort of tunnel vision when really
yeah,
it was just a distraction to keep me from the shit that I wasn't wanting to deal with, really, you know, in the
yeah.
background.
No, completely. But I think if I'd say most blokes, if they were really honest, they could resonate with a lot of what we've said today. They'd be. I know a lot of people who would say, "Nah, not me," and I know they'd be fucking lying. And then probably some girls as well, especially, you know, some of the stuff around, you know, food and the gut health and mental health and stuff. Where can people find you and your work and what you've done across? You mentioned a book and social, you know, your social media channels. Where can people interact with you and just keep learning from you?
Most of my stuff, man, is on Instagram. I pretty much post all of my stuff on there. I'm
Yeah,
currently in the process of doing some YouTube stuff and
yeah,
getting some bigger stuff going on. I do interviews and chats with people,
yeah, yeah,
all sorts of great guests that I've had on. And yeah, just connect with me there, you know. And yeah, I've got a website where you can see more about the stuff and the protocols I do with people. But I always like to send people to my Instagram to see what I'm about, see if they feel
yeah.
it or not, and then they can always decide if they want to connect or not.
So it's at Ryan, the holistic health coach. Is that right?
It is bit of a mouthful, but yeah.
That's all right. We'll try and we'll obviously tag you in everything, mate. I really appreciate you coming on. Big thanks to Tiny Rebel Brewery. So they give us a couple of beers. I've got non-alcoholic beer because it's in the morning. But they give us a couple of beers for every episode. So big thanks to them. Big thanks to everyone who downloads, subscribes, rates, and reviews. Find us on Instagram. So we're at Catflap Chats, and on Twitter as well, on Facebook. Find Ryan, so Ryan the Holistic Health Coach, on Instagram. And I watched a couple of your Instagram lives, and there's some really interesting stuff on there, which is thought provoking. And some of it, like we've said, isn't that hard to implement, and potentially the benefits for yourself in your environments could be huge. So definitely check him out as well. Ryan, thank you so much, mate. That was. I feel like that was these episodes are like therapy for me without having to pay for it. Like I'm able to get little bits. Someone said to me recently, like, why don't you tell your story? And I was like, I don't think I'm ready for that yet. You know, I'll probably end up losing a few mates and annoying a few people, but I feel like these are little bits of therapy for me where I can interact with. We've probably got very different lifestyles, but also very similar in some respects as well. And chatting to like-minded people who are open to learning and open to talking about the difficult and taboo subjects is enlightening for me, and I really appreciate it. So hopefully other people do, and thank you very much, mate.
Pleasure, man. Thank you very much for having me on.
Oh, perfect. Hey, look, I'm sure we'll do this again. I'm due out in Australia in a year or two's time for a wedding, mate. So we are 100% going to hook up as well. And I can imagine this isn't the first chat we have on this. You know, I think it's something that we need to keep at the top of people's minds, and we'll probably catch up again,
sure,
you know, next year sometime. All right, mate?
Yeah, man.
Hey, look, stay safe. Thank you for everything. I'm going to keep following what you're doing. I'm going to try and I've written down Brita filter, Celtic sea salt, just as I'm breathing. Just the 3 things that I'm going to try and.
That's it, man.
Quit porn
just
as
implement.
Well. I quit porn.
Do you know what? Do that one day at a time. One day at a time.
My missus be over the moon with that. Hey, thank you so much. I appreciate
Cheers,
it.
man.
You take care. Look after yourself.
And you, Mikey.
Ta-ra, buddy. Bye.